you're throwing away everything we built for you." My father's voice echoed through our family's Manhattan penthouse, sharp with disappointment. "A farmer? Have you lost your mind, Alexander?" I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city sprawl below. Behind me, my entire family had gathered for what they thought would be a celebration of my acceptance to Harvard Business School. Instead, I had just announced my decision to pursue sustainable agriculture. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said quietly. "I'm choosing a different path." My sister Olivia laughed from her perch on our mother's expensive Italian sofa. "Different? That's one way to put it. You want to play in the dirt while the rest of us run global corporations." The Blackwood name had been synonymous with Wall Street success for 3 generations. My grandfather had built an investment empire, my father had doubled it, and my sister was already making waves as a youngest partner at Goldman Sachs. And then there was me, the Harvard graduate who wanted to revolutionize farming. "This isn't just about farming," I tried to explain, turning to face them. "It's about developing sustainable agricultural technologies that could help solve global food security issues. I've been working on innovative hydroponic systems that cold." "Enough." My father slammed his hand on his mahogany desk. "No son of mine is going to become a farmer. Either you accept your place at Harvard Business School or you're on your own." My mother, elegant in her Channel suit, stepped forward. "Alexander, darling, be reasonable. You have a trust fund waiting for you, connections in every major financial institution. Why would you want to throw that away to grow vegetables?" I pulled out my tablet and opened the presentation I prepared. "Look at these projections. The world's population is growing, but our arable land is shrinking. Traditional farming methods won't be enough. My hydroponic systems could revolutionize urban agriculture. We could grow food anywhere, using 90% less water, producing higher yields." "Oh, stop it with your plants and water systems," Olivia interrupted, rolling her eyes. "You sound ridiculous. Just admit you're having some sort of quarter-life crisis and get over it." My father stood up, straightening his custom-made suit. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Harvard tomorrow, accept your place in the business school, and we'll pretend this foolish farming notion never happened." I took a deep breath. No. The silence that followed was deafening. "What did you say?" My father's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. I said no. I'm not going to Harvard Business School. I'm going to pursue my vision for sustainable agriculture. My father's face turned red. "Then get out. Don't expect a penny from this family. Your trust fund, your allowance, your apartment, it's all gone. Go play in the dirt if that's what you want, but you're no longer a Blackwood." I had expected this reaction, but it still hurt. I looked at my mother, who turned away, at Olivia, who smirked, at my father, whose face was set in stone. "Goodbye then," I said quietly, walking toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I heard Olivia's mocking voice. "Have fun being poor." That was 5 years ago. I left the penthouse that day with nothing but my savings from my summer internships, about $50,000 I'd kept in a separate account. It wasn't much by Blackwood standards, but it was enough to start. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn and began working on my prototypes. During the day, I consulted for small organic farms, learning everything I could about practical agriculture. At night, I refined my hydroponic systems, developing new technologies that could dramatically increase crop yields while minimizing water usage. The first year was brutal. I ate ramen noodles, worked 18-hour days, and dealt with countless failures. My family had cut me off completely. Even my Christmas card was returned unopened. The only person who still spoke to me was my grandfather's old gardener, Mr. Santos, who had taught me about plants when I was a child. "Your grandfather would have understood," Mr. Santos told me one day when I visited him. "He wasn't always rich, you know. He built everything from nothing, just like you're doing now." Those words kept me going through the darkest days. My breakthrough came in the second year. I had developed a vertical hydroponic system that could grow the equivalent of 2 acres of crops in the space of a shipping container. The system used advanced AI to monitor plant health, adjust nutrient levels, and optimize growing conditions in real time. I called it the EcoStack. With my remaining savings and a small loan from a local credit union, I installed the first EcoStack system in an abandoned warehouse in Brooklyn. The results exceeded even my expectations. We were producing fresh, organic vegetables in the middle of winter, using minimal water and zero pesticides. Local restaurants started noticing. Orders began coming in. Small at first, then larger. Word spread about the warehouse farm producing the best vegetables in New York. I named my company Green Tech Farms. By the third year, we had expanded to 3 warehouses. My innovative growing systems were attracting attention from sustainability experts and environmental organizations. A feature at National Geographic called Green Tech Farms, the future of urban agriculture. Then came the turning point. A major tech investor visited our main facility and was amazed by what he saw. "This isn't just farming," he said, walking through rows of perfectly grown vegetables suspended in my hydroponic systems. "This is agricultural technology at its finest." 2 weeks later, Green Tech Farms received its first major investment, $25 million to expand our operations. I used the money carefully, scaling up our technology while developing new innovations. We created smaller versions of the eco-stack for restaurants wanting to grow their own ingredients. We developed specialized systems for different types of crops. Every development was patented, every innovation protected. The company grew faster than our crops. By the 4th year, Green Tech Farms had facilities in 12 cities. Our technology was being used by major restaurant chains, hotels, and even space research organizations studying food production for long-term space missions. I kept a low profile through it all. Despite our success, I stayed in my modest Brooklyn apartment. I drove a used hybrid car. The only luxury I allowed myself was buying the building where Mr. Santos lived, ensuring he would never have to worry about rent again. Then came the day that would change everything. I was in our main research facility, testing a new hydroponic system designed for arid environments when my assistant rushed in. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her face urgent, "you need to see this." She handed me her tablet, displaying the morning's financial news. The headline made my heart stop. "Blackwood Investment Group faces bankruptcy amid massive agricultural investment losses." I quickly scanned the article. My family's company had invested heavily in traditional industrial farming operations, ignoring the growing shift towards sustainable agriculture. Now, with new environmental regulations and changing consumer preferences, those investments were turning toxic. "There's more," my assistant said, swiping to another article. "Your sister's firm is distancing itself from her." Apparently, she was the one who pushed for these investments. I set down the tablet, memories flooding back. All those times they had mocked my interest in sustainable farming, called it a foolish dream. Now their old-school approach to agriculture was destroying everything they had built. My phone buzzed, a number I hadn't seen in 5 years. "Mother. Alexander." Her voice had lost its usual polish. "We need to talk." I agreed to meet them at my main facility rather than their penthouse. Let them come to my world this time. They arrived the next morning. Father, mother, and Olivia, all looking distinctly uncomfortable as they were led through our hyper-modern growing facilities. Their designer clothes seemed out of place among the vertical gardens and humming hydroponic systems. I met them in my office, a simple space with a wall of living plants and a view of our experimental growing area. No mahogany desk, no expensive art pieces, just clean functionality and thriving greenery. "Nice place," my mother managed, though I could tell the industrial setting disturbed her. My father got straight to the point. "We've had some setbacks. Your sister tells me your company has become quite successful in agricultural technology." Olivia, who had been examining my office with barely concealed disdain, snorted. "Successful is an understatement. Green Tech Farms is worth more than our entire agricultural portfolio now." I leaned back in my chair. "Yes, I know. $890 million at last valuation. We're expanding into Europe and Asia next month." The silence that followed was heavy with realization. The son they had disowned for being a simple farmer now ran a company worth nearly $1 billion. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked softly. "Would it have mattered?" I replied. 5 years ago, you made it very clear that unless I followed your prescribed path, I wasn't part of the family." My father shifted uncomfortably. "We may have been hasty in our judgment." "Hasty?" I stood up and walked to the window. "You threw me out, cut me off completely. Didn't even bother to find out what I was building here." I pressed a button, and the blinds opened fully, revealing the vast expanse of our research facility. Acres of vertical farms stretched out before us. producing more food in this one building than a traditional farm 20 times its size. This is the future of agriculture, I said, gesturing to the view. While you were investing in industrial farming operations that destroy the soil and waste water, we were developing systems that can grow food anywhere, sustainably, with minimal environmental impact. Olivia stepped forward. That's actually why we're here. We need a bailout? I finished for her. You want me to rescue the family company from the crisis you created? She had the grace to look embarrassed. We're prepared to offer you a fair deal. Your company would absorb our agricultural division, and in return. No, the word came out sharp and final. No, my father's face reddened. You'd let your family's company collapse? I turned to face them fully. The Blackwood Investment Group isn't my family's company. You made that very clear 5 years ago. Green Tech Farms is my company, built without your money, your connections, or your support. But we're family, my mother pleaded. Family? I laughed softly. Family supports each other. Family believes in each other. Family doesn't disown someone for following their dreams. I walked to my desk and pressed the intercom. Sarah, please bring in the reports. My assistant entered with a stack of folders, distributing them to my stunned family members. These are detailed analyses of your agricultural investments, I explained. As you'll see, most of them are unsustainable, both environmentally and financially. However, I paused, letting the moment stretch. I'm willing to help. Their heads snapped up simultaneously. Not with a bailout, I continued. But I'll offer this. Green Tech Farms will selectively acquire the viable properties from your agricultural portfolio at fair market value. We'll transform them into sustainable operations using our technology. This will give you enough capital to restructure the rest of your business, provided you make some major changes. What kind of changes? My father asked worriedly. First, Olivia steps down from any involvement in agricultural investments. Second, you commit to environmental sustainability in all future investments. And third, I smiled slightly, you establish a foundation to support young entrepreneurs focusing on sustainable technologies, especially those whose families don't believe in their vision. My father started to protest, but Olivia cut him off. We accept. Everyone looked at her in surprise. He's right, she said quietly. We were wrong. All of us. We were so convinced we knew everything about success that we couldn't see the world changing around us. While we were clinging to the old ways, Alexander was building the future. My mother wiped away a tear. We're so sorry, Alexander. We should have believed in you. I'm not looking for apologies, I said firmly. I'm looking for change. Real change, not just words. Over the next 6 months, Green Tech Farms absorbed and transformed the viable parts of Blackwood's agricultural holdings. We converted failing industrial farms into state-of-the-art sustainable operations. The Blackwood Future Innovation Foundation was established, providing grants to young entrepreneurs focused on environmental solutions. My family's company survived, though significantly humbled. Olivia found a new path, eventually joining Green Tech's board as our sustainability compliance officer, after completing an extensive environmental science course, of course. Today, Green Tech Farms is valued at over $2 billion, with operations on 4 continents. We're leading the revolution in sustainable urban agriculture, proving that you can feed the world without destroying it. My father still struggles to understand why I keep my modest apartment in Brooklyn instead of moving to a penthouse. My mother has finally stopped sending me brochures for luxury cars. And Olivia, well, she recently started growing her own herbs in one of our home hydroponic units. Last week, I visited Mr. Santos in the building I'd bought for him. He was tending to his rooftop garden, which now features one of our smaller eco-stack systems. Your grandfather would be proud, he said, carefully pruning a tomato plant. Not just of your success, but of how you achieved it, by believing in yourself and your vision. I looked out over the city, where more and more rooftops are turning green with our hydroponic systems. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving your critics wrong, it's proving yourself right while making the world a better place. Yesterday, I received an invitation to speak at Harvard Business School. They want me to give a lecture on sustainable business innovation. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. I'm going to Harvard after all, just not in the way my family had planned. I'm having the lecture recorded and distributed to every aspiring entrepreneur who's been told their dreams are worthless. Because sometimes the simple farmer knows more about the future than all the Wall Street experts combined. I never expected to find myself in a hospital room at midnight, arguing with my stubborn father-in-law about whether his life was worth saving. But there I was, watching Harold Anderson's heart monitor beep erratically as he refused the surgery that could save his life. "It's too expensive," he wheezed, his face gray with pain. "I won't spend my retirement fund on medical bills. Just let nature take its course." I'm Andrea Fletcher Anderson, Director of Operations at Sunset Years Living Communities, though Harold doesn't know that part. To him, I'm just his son's wife who married up and got lucky when Peter, his precious only child, chose me despite my working-class background. The irony of him refusing life-saving surgery while living in one of my company's most exclusive retirement communities wasn't lost on me. But then again, Harold had never bothered to read the fine print on his residency contract, the one that listed A. Fletcher Anderson as the property owner. "Dad," Peter pleaded from beside me, "please be reasonable. The money doesn't matter." But to Harold, money always mattered. Even now, with his heart failing, he was more concerned about preserving his wealth than preserving his life. The same wealth he'd lorded over everyone for decades, using it as a weapon to control his family. "I've worked too hard," Harold insisted, "to throw it all away on hospital bills. Do you know how much I've saved? How carefully I've planned?" I did know, actually. As the owner of the retirement community where he lived, I had access to all his financial records. I knew about the millions he'd hoarded, the investments he'd hidden, and the trusts he'd set up to avoid taxes. I also knew he could easily afford the surgery with just the interest from his accounts. The doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen, pulled us aside in the hallway. "If we don't operate within the next 12 hours, the damage could be irreversible. The cost shouldn't be an issue. His insurance will cover most of it." "He doesn't care about that," Peter explained, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "Dad's always been," he trailed off, looking for a diplomatic word. "Obsessed with money," I finished for him. To the point of letting it kill him, apparently. It hadn't always been this way. According to Peter, Harold used to be different before his wife. Peter's mother died 15 years ago. She'd been the generous one, the one who balanced Harold's tendency toward miserliness. After her death, Harold had retreated into himself, becoming increasingly fixated on preserving his wealth. When Peter and I married 5 years ago, Harold made his disapproval clear. Not because of who I was, but because of what I represented, someone who might one day have a claim to his precious money. He even tried to force Peter to make me sign a prenup, not knowing that my net worth was actually higher than his son's. "I need to make a call," I told Peter, stepping away from the hospital room. In my office, there was a file I'd been keeping for just such an occasion. It was time to use it. 20 minutes later, my assistant Megan arrived at the hospital carrying a thick folder. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, handing it over. "Once you reveal everything." "He's leaving us no choice," I replied. "Sometimes people need a wake-up call before it's too late." Back in Harold's room, his condition had deteriorated further. The monitors showed his heart struggling to maintain rhythm, each beat more irregular than the last. "I've made my decision," he announced as we entered. "I'm signing out AMA. I won't waste my money on this surgery." "Before you do that," I said calmly, "there are some documents you need to review." I opened the folder and pulled out his residency contract for Willow Creek Estates, the luxury retirement community he'd been living in for the past 3 years. The same community he'd bragged about getting into, not knowing I personally approved his application. "What does my housing contract have to do with anything?" he demanded. "Everything," I replied, turning to the ownership page. "You might want to look at who actually owns Willow Creek Estates." Harold squinted at the document, his eyes widening as he read my name. "This must be a mistake." "No mistake," I said, pulling out more papers. "I own not just Willow Creek, but the entire Sunset Years Living Communities Corporation. All 15 properties across New England, including the one where you've been living at a significantly reduced rate because you're my father-in-law." The heart monitor's beeping increased as Harold processed this information. Peter stepped forward, concerned, but I wasn't finished. "You've spent 5 years looking down on me, assuming I married Peter for money. The truth is, I've been subsidizing your luxury lifestyle out of respect for my husband. That ends now." Harold's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You're lying. This is some kind of trick. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Megan, please initiate Protocol 17 for Willow Creek Estates. Full audit of all resident accounts, starting with Harold Anderson's preferential rate agreement. You can't do this, Harold sputtered. I have a contract. Yes, you do. A contract that clearly states all preferential rates are subject to review if the resident demonstrates reckless disregard for their own health and safety. Refusing life-saving surgery for financial reasons certainly qualifies. Peter was watching this exchange with a mixture of amazement and concern. He knew I was successful in property management, but hadn't known the full extent of my business empire. We'd have to talk about that later. So here are your options, I continued, my voice firm but not unkind. Option 1, you get the surgery, use some of those millions you've been hoarding to save your own life, and continue living at Willow Creek with your current preferential rate. Option 2, you refuse the surgery, sign out AMA, and I immediately terminate your residency contract and initiate a full audit of your account. You wouldn't dare, Harold whispered, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Try me, I replied, pulling out one final document, a list of his hidden accounts that our financial team had compiled. By the way, the IRS might be very interested in some of these offshore arrangements. The room was silent except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Harold stared at me, then at Peter, then at the documents in his lap. For the first time in 5 years, I saw his carefully constructed facade of superiority crumble. Dr. Chen chose that moment to return. Mr. Anderson, we need your decision. The operating room is prepped and waiting. Harold looked at the contract in his hands, then at the heart monitor displaying his precarious condition. Finally, he looked at me, really looked at me, for perhaps the first time since we'd met. I'll have the surgery, he said quietly. As they prepared to take him to the operating room, he grabbed my hand. Why? He asked. Why help me all these years if you knew I was wrong about you? I thought about Peter, about the pain in his eyes every time his father's wealth obsession hurt someone, about the good man Harold must have been once, before grief and fear twisted him into someone who valued money over life itself. Because, I told him, sometimes people need a chance to remember what really matters. Let's hope it's not too late for you. As they wheeled him away, Peter turned to me with questions in his eyes. But before he could speak, Dr. Chen called for my attention. There were surgical consent forms to sign, insurance details to arrange. I had 12 hours of surgery ahead to figure out how to explain everything to my husband. And after that, assuming Harold survived, we had some serious family dynamics to reconstruct. Sometimes it takes a medical emergency to expose what's really sick in a family. The question was, could this surgery heal more than just Harold's heart? Part 2. The 12 hours of Harold's surgery gave me plenty of time to explain everything to Peter. We sat in the hospital's private waiting room, untouched coffee growing cold between us, as I laid out the full story of my business empire. So every time Dad bragged about his luxury retirement community, Peter shook his head, amazed. I was actually the one ensuring he had the best care possible, I finished. The reduced rate, the premium amenities, the special attention from staff. All because he was my father-in-law, though he never knew it. Why didn't you tell me the full extent of your success? I thought carefully before answering. At first, it was because I wanted to be sure you loved me for me, not my business. Then, after seeing how your father treated wealth and status, I wanted to protect what we had. Keep it separate from all that. Peter nodded slowly. Dad has that effect on people. Money becomes this toxic thing around him, poisoning everything it touches. It wasn't always like that, though, was it? I asked gently. Before your mom died? No, Peter's voice softened with memory. Dad used to be different. Generous, even. Mom was sick for a long time before she died, cancer. The medical bills were enormous, even with insurance. Dad spent everything he had trying to save her. When she died anyway, something broke in him. He started hoarding money like it could protect him from ever feeling that helpless again. The pieces started falling into place. Harold's obsession with preserving his wealth, his refusal to spend on medical care, his distrust of anyone he thought might want his money. He wasn't just a miser. He was a traumatized man whose grief had warped into financial paranoia. Dr. Chen found us just after dawn, looking tired but satisfied. The surgery was successful. We repaired the damage to his heart, and his prognosis is good. He'll need several weeks of recovery and cardiac rehabilitation, but he should make a full recovery. Thank you, I said, meaning it more than she could know. When can we see him? He's in recovery now. Give him about an hour. As we waited to see Harold, I made some calls to my office. Megan, hold off on Protocol 17. Instead, let's implement the family care package for Mr. Anderson's recovery. Yes, the full spectrum, private duty nurses, rehabilitation services, everything. Peter raised an eyebrow. More preferential treatment? No, I corrected him. This time we're doing it openly. It's time your father learned the difference between using money as a weapon and using it as a tool to help people. When we finally entered Harold's recovery room, he looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable without his usual armor of superiority. His eyes fluttered open as we approached. The surgery, he croaked. How much? Is covered by your insurance, I interrupted firmly, and the rest is taken care of. But we need to talk about what happens next. Over the next hour, as Harold drifted in and out of consciousness, I outlined the recovery plan. The private duty nurses from my company's healthcare division, the specialized cardiac rehabilitation program, the temporary modifications to his apartment at Willow Creek. I can't afford all that, he protested weakly. Actually, you can. I pulled out a financial statement, his real one, not the modified version he showed everyone. You have more than enough. But in this case, you don't have to. It's covered under your residency contract with Sunset Years Living Communities. My company. Harold was quiet for a long time, processing this information with a clarity that perhaps only facing death could bring. All these years, he finally said, I thought I was the successful one. The one with all the power. Money isn't power, I told him. It's a responsibility. Something my father taught me before he died. He built his business from nothing, but he never let it become more important than people. Like I did, Harold whispered. Like you did, I agreed. But it's not too late to change that. The next few weeks were transformative. Harold approached his recovery with the same determination he'd once applied to accumulating wealth. But something else was healing besides his heart. It started small, him actually reading the reports I brought about his care, asking questions about the business I built, showing genuine interest instead of condescension. Then came the day he asked to see his full financial portfolio. I want to understand, he said, how to use it better. Not just keep it. We spent an afternoon going through his accounts. With his permission, I showed him how his money could be better invested, not just for return, but for impact. Programs that help seniors afford quality care. Medical research foundations. Community development projects. Your mother would have loved this, Peter said quietly, watching his father approve a significant donation to the hospital's cardiac care unit. The real breakthrough came during Harold's first week back at Willow Creek. I was there to check on his settling, and when one of the housekeeping staff, Maria, came to clean his apartment. Mrs. Fletcher Anderson, she greeted me with a smile. How are you today? Harold's head snapped up. You know who she is? Of course, Maria looked confused. Mrs. Fletcher Anderson visits all the properties regularly. She knows everyone by name. She helped my son get a scholarship for college last year through the company's education program. I watched Harold digest this information, that the daughter-in-law he dismissed as a gold digger was not only successful but genuinely respected by her employees. That evening, he asked to speak with me privately. I've been wrong, he said simply. About everything. About you. About what matters. He pulled out an old photo album. Would you like to hear about Peter's mother? About who we were before I forgot what was important. For the next few hours, Harold shared stories, not about money or status, but about love and family and the woman who had balanced him before grief threw him off course. With each story, I saw pieces of the man Peter had told me about, the father he'd lost when his mother died. Last week, we hosted a family dinner at Willow Creek. Harold insisted on inviting Maria and her son, along with several other staff members he'd come to know during his recovery. The man who once would only associate with his own kind now sat happily listening to stories in a mix of English and Spanish, genuinely interested in lives different from his own. You know what the strange thing is? He told me as the evening wound down. I felt poor when I was hoarding everything. Now, learning to share it, I feel richer than ever. Yesterday, I received a package from Harold, the detailed records of his offshore accounts. "Help me fix this," the note read. "It's time to do things right." Peter found me in my office, reviewing the documents. "You know," he said, wrapping his arms around me, "some people might have let him refuse that surgery, after how he treated you all these years." I thought about my own father, who taught me that true wealth isn't what you keep, but what you build and share. About Harold, who had lost his way in grief, but was finding his way back. About the family we were slowly becoming. "Sometimes," I said, "the best investment you can make is in giving people a chance to change." The heart monitor that had beeped so ominously that night in the hospital now sits in my office. A gift from Dr. Chen. A reminder, she'd said, that sometimes healing a heart takes more than just surgery. She was right. Harold's heart is stronger now, in more ways than one. And our family has learned that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property holdings, but in the capacity to grow, to change, and to open our hearts to new possibilities. Even now, Harold still occasionally slips and makes a comment about money. But these days, it's more likely to be about how to use it to help others than how to keep it for himself. Baby steps, perhaps, but in the right direction. After all, some investments take time to show their true returns.